Hello everyone and welcome to the series Curious Science with Sagnik. In this series, we explore the science behind everyday things, from the technologies we use to the environmental and biological process that shape our world. The goal of the series is simple: to turn curiosity into understanding. So, when you visit a textile store, you may feel pleased seeing the rows of vibrant fabrics such as bright reds, deep blues, and rich purples, and countless other colors. The colors make our clothes beautiful and attractive. But have you ever wondered what lies behind these colors and what happens during the dyeing process and where do these chemicals go after the fabrics are colored? In today's episode, The Hidden Story of Textile Dyes, we'll explore the science behind textile dyes and uncover their impact on environment and human health. So let's begin. Now let's start with the next slide, which is the background of textile dyeing. So before we move into the further slides and understand about the environmental impacts textile dyes possess, we need to understand about the historical evidences of textile dye that it was used in the earlier days as well. So if we look at the first point, it is written that humans have used natural dyes from minerals, plants and animals since the ancient times. So it was basically common, right? It was not uncommon back in the earlier days that humans were relying on some other material. Rather, they have extracted dyes, though it was not synthetic. They have used natural dyes that was mainly obtained through minerals, plants and animals. The earlier dyeing practices was seen in Egypt and Mesopotamia, right? So it was as early as 2500 BC. So, you could say that the process of dyeing was observed way earlier, right? Which is evident from the year which was 2500 BC. So certain dyes like purple were historically restricted to elite due to the high cost, right? So there were certain dyes. Even today also you can find some dyes, though I would say that in today's world, due to the invent of synthetic dyes, the price have become a lot cheaper. But in earlier days, there were certain dyes that were having high cost, and because of that the middle class were not able to use those, and it was mainly restricted to the elites. Now dyeing has played an important role in the cultural expression as well. So let's just take an example. In India, we often see there are a lot of festivals during a year, right? And those festivals are somewhat integrally embedded in our culture. Now one of the major things during a tradition in India is the kind of dress we wear, right? And those dress wear is having vibrant colors, right? So those colors are definitely increasing, and because of that, I would say that there is a need for the textile industry, right? There is a surge in the certain textiles or garments, and because of that, there is definitely an increased pressure in the dyeing industry as well. Moving forward, the evolution of synthetic dyes. So in the year of 1856, it was William Henry Perkin who first discovered the color mauve. It was mainly obtained from aniline purple. So you can see the image from here, right? So you can see a garment and you can see how the entire process is being done. Now the discovery marked the beginning of the synthetic dye industry. This is very important. This is a year which basically is crucial because from here there was the invent of synthetic dyes, right, from natural dyes. So earlier mainly dyes were restricted to natural ways, but after 1856 there was a need of synthetic dyes due to the fact that there was an increasing population, right, and there was an increased pressure on the textile industry to provide high quality garments with vibrant colors. So there was a need to invent the synthetic dyes as well, and it was William Henry Perkin who did this, right? So later development introduced certain dyes like phthalocyanine dyes and reactive dyes also. And synthetic dyes was really a crucial juncture because compared to natural dyes, synthetic dyes was cheap, vibrant, and it was widely used in the textile manufacturing industry. Moving forward, if you want to understand the economic impacts of textile industry, it contributes about 14% of the industrial production, right? So if we consider the entire production unit of the industries, textile holds a significant amount, which is 14%, right? And it accounts for around 27% of total export in certain economies, right? So we can say that textile industry also plays a crucial role in significantly affecting the GDP of a certain country, or the economic conditions of a certain country. It also provides employment for millions of workers as well. So this is very important, as it can also generate employment opportunities, right? Production has increasingly shifted to countries like India and China due to the economic advantages. So we can see that in the global world, as it is evident that India and China are still dominating the textile industry market. So it is very crucial that we try to capture this certain market, and because of that, definitely there is an increased demand of certain dyes as well. Now let's understand about the environmental impacts of dyeing. So firstly, textile dyeing requires large quantities of water. So starting from the pre-processing stages of the textile till the final processing, the entire operation takes a huge amount of water, right? And this certain water should be processed, right? I mean, we can't be using any kind of water for our textile process, right? And because of this, there is an increased production on energy levels as well, right? This can significantly affect the energy output of a country. The second point is that it can generate highly polluted wastewater containing dyes and chemicals. So you can visualize it from the image that certain chemicals are released into the water body, and it can cause mainly three types of pollution: air, soil, and water. The air pollution is caused, if you notice at this figure, this large scale industries often is equipped with certain chimneys, and this can produce smoke. And if these are not well equipped with certain filters, what happens is this smoke can definitely degrade the air quality index. Considering soil, so firstly we need to understand about water. So what happens is this chemicals which are released into the water, these are very toxic, and it can affect the marine life that are involving fishes, certain plants as well, marine plants. Apart from this, the certain particular chemicals which are into the water can penetrate into the soil layer. Along with this, there is also this seep of those certain chemicals into soil, and because of this can degrade the soil quality as well, and this can lead to serious environmental pollution, especially in water bodies, right? Now, considering this particular point, which is many dyes are chemically stable and resistant to degradation. So what happens is during the degradation process, we might be aware that plastic takes a lot of time to degrade in the environment, right? It is very similar with textile dyes as well. So for example, let's take a hypothetical situation where every textile industry is completely shut. So what I mean is, it is not possible in practical life, but just considering it in a theoretical sense, let's understand that every textile industry in every corner of the world gets completely shut down. So what happens? I mean, does the process gets halted? So will we see that the particular water quality improves? It doesn't work like that, because these certain chemicals are released into this water body, and they are present in our atmosphere, and this takes a lot of time. I mean, there are certain chemicals which are reported which can take so much time that even societies of humans would collapse, but that certain chemical would exist into the atmosphere, right? As it was evident from the earlier days as well that there were certain dyes which were present during testing. So we can say that if this certain dyes are present in the near future also, it is very difficult to separate them and probably purify our water resources. Moving forward, there are certainly several hazardous effects of dye effluents, and I'm talking about this in humans, right? So this particular slide is very important because this is one of the major concern area and research area that is performed majorly in this particular era. So the first common dye, which is azo dyes, right? These are one of the most widely used dyes in textiles. And for example, those who are not aware about research, how the research process works, you can visit Google Scholar, right? And you can just type about azo dyes and degradation, and you will see that most of the papers regarding the textile dye degradation process are majorly done on azo dyes only, right? Because this is one of the dye which is most widely used in the industrial scale, or I would say in the industries, right? And the major concerning area is that these dyes are persistent and very difficult to degrade. So what happens is, again, this dyes remain in the atmosphere for very long, and this can, repeatedly get introduced into certain food chain or food web, and because of this there is an increased chance of biomagnification, right? So those who are not aware about biomagnification, this means that certain chemicals when introduced to the food web, so for example, there are small, fishes are there, right? So this particular small fishes, let's say, consume this certain chemicals, right? And when these small fishes are consumed by large fishes, right, what happens is the chemicals, because they will eat a lot of small fishes, right, this large fish will consume a lot of small fishes, right? And because of this, there is an increased level of chemicals which is present inside the body of fishes. Now when humans consume this particular fishes, right, what happens is, because humans would also, consume a lot of large fishes, this chemicals significantly increase in the level of humans. So for example, I'm just taking a hypothetical situation. Let's say there are two chemicals which are eaten by this three fishes, right? So single fish will get only two amount of chemicals, right? But when this large fish is it, because for example, a single fish will eat, the three small fishes. So a single large fish will consume 6 units. And for example, humans consume daily, let's say, an amount of 2 large fish. They will not consume entirely, but because this chemical will be present equally in all cells, so humans will consume, 6 chemicals only, right? So, whenever I'm considering a human, they will, when they'll consume a large fish, the chemical will be 12 units, right? So if you see, the chemicals which are present in the atmosphere was only 2 units. But if you look at humans, this is increased to 12 units. So this is called as biomagnification, right? A certain trace elements gets enlarged or magnified in humans. So this is one of the effects which can cause significant harm, because in small fishes it's only present in 2 units, but when we consider humans, and in humans there is certain gene which are not very resistant to certain changes, and those chemical can cause significant changes to the human body. And because of this, there are various effects such as mutated cells, genotoxicity. There is an increased cancer risk because of the presence of genotoxicity, which is the toxicity present at the genetic level. It can cause DNA damage, and because of the DNA damage, there is a possibility of increased cancer risk. And again, this cancer risk can cause mutated cells which can become malignant from benign, and this can ultimately result to cancer. Not only in cancer, there are certain reported disease apart from cancer also in literature. For example, there was an Indian study conducted which has reported that certain areas of India were reported with itching or respiratory issues as well. So I would say that textile dye can act as a systemic particle as well, which causes a variety of systemic effects in the human body. There are several associated health risks. As I mentioned, there are genotoxicity, mutagenicity, and carcinogenicity. So those who are not aware, genotoxicity is basically the increased toxicity in the genetic levels, okay? Mutagenicity is basically the able of mutation. So those who are not aware about the definition of cancer, so when a certain cell grows uncontrolled or proliferates in a uncontrolled manner. So for example, during cell cycle, let's say a cell proliferates into from 1 into 2, and then it follows a path of into 2. But in cancer, this particular process gets broken, and it can be into 4, into 16, into 24. So uncontrolled proliferation happens in a human body. So moving forward, let me just clean the particular slide, and from now on, just to mention, I'll upload this particular PPTs because the viewers can revisit it later and can definitely refer to the certain points as well. So because of this, there is a need for sustainable solutions, right? So from the earlier slide, it is very clear that we need to conserve our energy levels, right? And it is often difficult to do because textile industry often consume a lot of energy. Apart from this, there is also a need for sustainable future to maintain a healthy environment as well. To do this, there are certain techniques as well. So for example, conventional dyeing methods can cause significant environment damage. What do we mean by conventional dyeing methods? So before the invent of biological methods of textile dyeing, which we'll discuss just a few moments later, in the earlier days there was certainly two methods that were used most commonly, which was physical and chemical methods. Though there is also rapid technological advancements in this two field, but comparing to a biological process, this often consume a lot of energy. So to make a energy efficient process, we need newer techniques, and biological dye production and treatment offers a promising alternative to this type of techniques, such as physical and chemical. If we consider this particular approaches, these are eco-friendly, right? So when we consume physical or chemical processes, they often release huge amount of toxic material into the atmosphere, so that is often not considered as a eco-friendly alternative. It is cost effective, so this can be done, and it is shown across various research study that it is cost effective, and it was replicated in certain simulated environments with much less cost. It is also suitable for developing countries because certainly there are certain countries which are not financially capable of affording such kind of techniques such as physical or chemical. They can rely on biological alternatives, and it also aims to reduce environmental impact while maintaining the economic growth as well. Okay, so we need a technique which can definitely improve our environment, but it shouldn't be affecting our overall economy as well, right? Now, when we consider about the Indian textile industry, as I mentioned in the previous slide, that India and China are the two countries which are still dominant in the textile industry or the textile market, right? So the Indian textile industry plays a major role in our country's economy, right? So certain textiles of India are often exported, and this can definitely contribute to our economy. Understand certain statistical figures, though I would say this is considered from a previous study, so this is not the recent year findings, right? This is not the finding of 2026, right? So for example, there is the 14% of industrial production, right? Of 100% total production unit level, 14% is contributed by the textile production. 4% to the India's GDP, 13% of total export, 27% of foreign exchange earning, and 5% of global textile export. It provides employment to over 45 million people. So it creates a huge employment opportunity as well, okay, for various individuals, right? Moving forward, it also involves the processing of natural and synthetic fibers into yarn, which are later woven and knitted into textiles. So again, this point directly correlates that this particular industry is not restricted to certain stages like dye processing or certain textile processing steps, but rather it is a complete operational step which starts from the pre-processing stages till the final production capabilities of a certain market, right? Moving ahead, there is also the market size and growth. So for example, Indian textile market reached approximately US dollar 165 billion in 2022. The 125 billion, the breakup of 165 million is 125 million from the domestic consumption and 40 billion from the exports, right? Expected growth rate, the compound annual growth rate or the CAGR is around 10%. Right, the projected market size is 350 billion by 2030. So what does this show is that Indian country as overall is having a lot of potential in the textile industry, and it should definitely capture this market. This could significantly affect the economy of our country. The growth is driven by increasing domestic demand and the rising global textile demand as well. So mainly these are the two factors which contributes to all this kind of points. Okay, moving forward, let's understand about the textile dyeing process, right? So it starts with it starts and then it basically undergoes a preparation method. So basically I have divided it into two methods. So firstly, let's understand about the fabric selection. The dyeing process will later understand. Okay, so the fabric selection starts with a pre-treatment process, right? So after the pre-treatment process, it undergoes a dyeing process, right? So the dyeing process can undergo in two ways, which is batch dyeing and continuous dyeing. In batch dyeing, what happens is there is a preparation of the dye bath, then there is the dyeing process, right? And in continuous dyeing, it undergoes dye application, right? After that, it undergoes a process called as rinsing and ultimately results in drying and then production into the market. Considering the dyeing process, it starts again, as I mentioned, it starts from the rinsing process, right? So after rinsing, basically it can undergo drying or the end drying process, right? So the drying process ultimately results in the finishing, which undergoes some kind of quality check, then packaging, then the end stage. So this is basically the flowchart of the textile dyeing process. I'll share the PPT. You can just refer to the process. If you want to understand any specific process, you can just refer to other literature or research works as well. Moving forward, what are the kind of impacts textile dyes poses, right? So it can contribute towards human health impact, and it can contribute toward environmental impact. Now, human health impact can have various, such as the first is showing about such as the region in thyroid. It can cause several effects over thyroid and parathyroid glands, right? Apart from that, it can also contribute, it can definitely enter into the lymphatic system and into our systemic circulation as well. It can contribute towards various digestive issues, okay, related to the main body organs when we are referring to, so the upper body organs, right, and the thorax. So definitely in the abdomen as well. Okay, apart from this, it can also cause environmental impact. For example, the wastewater which is released, it can cause several environment impacts, such as fishes can die. It can also affect the certain plants, certainly some phytoplanktons, certainly some soil plants which are growing on soils. So overall, the water body can reduce its BOD, the biological oxygen demand, and it can significantly affect the marine life. So moving forward, so what are the kind of health impacts of textile dye effluent? So these are all the body systems. You can refer to various different system. For example, in skin, it can cause skin irritation, dermatitis, rashes, itching, skin discoloration. When we look at respiratory system, it can cause asthma, bronchitis, breathing difficulty, throat and nose irritation. And please mind that along with this, every organ can also contribute towards cancer as well, right? So all this can ultimately also result in cancer. So this is one of the very concerning factor. Liver, there can be liver toxicity, liver dysfunction due to accumulation of harmful chemical. Ultimately, this can cause several damages towards the liver tissue as well. There can be kidney damage and impaired filtration caused by the toxic substances. In the nervous system, there can be headaches, dizziness, or neurological disorders as well. There can be certainly different type of genotoxicity and mutagenicity, which can lead to the genetic damage. It can result in weakening of immune response. In the digestive system, it can contribute towards nausea, vomiting, stomach irritation, or in different part of our digestive system. It can, like in pancreas or in the intestines as well, it can cause several tissue damage effects as well. It can also increase the risk of cancers in certain organs such as bladder, liver, and skin cancer, right? Moving forward, what are some of the comprehensive methods and the techniques for the treatment of textile dye waste? So, firstly, let's understand about the physical methods. So, mainly some of the techniques, though there are other techniques, I have just in brief, I've just tried to explain those. Certainly, there are majorly three techniques, that is nanofiltration, electrodialysis, and adsorption technique. So nanofiltration basically uses a filter which is composed of or constructed in the nano level, right, which basically removes small solute in the range of nano. It also retains multivalent ions as well, right. In the case of electrodialysis, is used mainly in the desalination and wastewater treatment and adsorption techniques. Certainly, there are certain adsorption, physical adsorption techniques such as activated carbon for dye removal. So you use a substance, for example, this is a carbon, activated carbon, and basically this can attach, and just use another color. Just give me a minute. Okay, there can be various textile dyes which can be adsorbed over this particular substance. Moving forward, there can be different kind of chemical methods as well. For example, there can be Fenton reagent, ozone, and UV ultraviolet H2O2 treatment as well. So for example, in the Fenton reagent, it degrades organic compounds like phenol and nitrobenzene. Ozone can be used to decolorize reactive dyes, and UV H2O2 treatment can form hydroxyl radical to degrade organic pollutant. But apart from the physical and chemical, there are certain biological treatments, and in this particular segment, we'll comprehensively elaborate this kind of techniques. And as I mentioned in the earlier slide, there are certain qualities which are attributed, such as mainly this all techniques are sustainable, right? So the first is there is a need for biological treatment. So traditional wastewater treatment, as mentioned, there can be certainly physical or chemical. They are costly and they require continuous chemical input, right? So mainly the reason we don't consider this whenever we are comparing with biological, because the demand of energy is considerably high. It is an eco-friendly alternative, right? So it is cost effective and environmentally sustainable. So what happens with chemical process is that often when this particular textile dyes are exposed with certain chemicals, those chemicals are also required to be degraded in our environment, right? So again, this particular doesn't completely offers a environment practical solution, but biological on the other way does that, right? Mechanism is microorganism break down complex dye molecules, I would say, using their enzymes. So just place another word, that is enzymes. There are certain enzymes that can break them into simpler and less toxic compounds. And the advantages are that there is a lower operational cost, reduced chemical usage, and minimal secondary pollution, right? Moving forward, there are majorly 4 types of microorganisms which are used in dye degradation: bacteria, fungi, yeast, and algae. So we'll explain each of them, right? The first is textile dye degradation using algae. So algae are photosynthetic microorganisms which are used for the wastewater treatment. So firstly, you should understand what are the the kind of algae we have. They are mainly photosynthetic organisms, right? So they are able to perform photosynthesis, right? What are the removal mechanism? There can be different kind of removal, mainly through biosorption. So they basically adsorb certain molecules onto them and they can degrade in that way. It can also result in biodegradation and reductive transformation of dye molecules. So what happens is, firstly they adsorb it onto their surfaces, then they using their enzyme they can biodegrade, and ultimately there is a transformation of those harmful chemicals into natural molecules. So there are certainly key algal species, for example chlorella, oscillatoria, and spirogyra, right? The efficiency is around 50 to 70% in the textile wastewater, right? So it can reduce the color intensity. Now, how does intensity is measured? Generally, it is measured using an instrument called as UV visible spectrophotometry, right? So those who are not aware, please you can just refer to some lab manuals regarding UV visible spectra. I'll just write the full name overall, right? Just give me a second, I'll just erase them. So you can refer to this particular instrument, which is called as UV visible spectrophotometry, right? So you can just refer to some kind of lab manual. This will explain you how the instrument works, and mainly the textile dye degradation process, the efficiency rate, which is the color removal rate, is measured using this equipment. The degradation process is that azodyes are broken down into aromatic amines, which are further metabolized, right? So there are certain azodyes, when exposed to algae, these are broken down into aromatic amines, which are then further metabolized and removed into the environment. Generally, the output product is naturally suitable. Moving forward, there can also be fungal bioremediation. So, for example, fungi possess strong metabolic abilities to biodegrade complex synthetic dyes. The mechanism is that they break down dye molecules into less harmful compound through certain enzymatic reaction. I mean, the process is same, just that how the the entry point, or there are certain minor changes when compared to other species, right? The target pollutant, again, the major class is azodite, because this particular research work is extracted from one of my research studies, and we have done it mainly on certain azodides only, right? The environmental benefit is that it reduces pollution from textile effluent and supports eco-friendly wastewater treatment, right? There can be different kind of fungal species used in dye degradation, and those who are not aware about how do we basically identify this kind of fungal species. I mean, so the process generally used in microbiology, you can just refer again to some lab manual, but I'll just give you a brief. So for example, this particular research work was done by our group in the area of MP, right, Madhya Pradesh in India. So we collected the wastewater, right? Then through various technique, we extracted the particular microorganism. Mainly, the process undergoes a certain procedure called as spreading and streaking, and then incubating it, right, for 24 hours. Then observing those certain species under a certain equipment called as 16S rRNA technique. This is a genetic sequencing technique. So from this we can basically classify certain organisms, right? And we can pinpoint whether it is a bacterial species or what kind of species it is, right? Though the process actually differs. For fungal, it is the process slightly becomes different. For bacteria, it is again a different method. There are a lot of studies also that are reported in research that are often concerned about viruses as well, right? So when we are considering about the fungal species, there can be Trichoderma viridi, which is effective in dye decolorization and biodegradation. There are Trichoderma coningi as well, Trichoderma hertzianum, Aspergillus niger, Aspergillus flavus, and Fusarium oxysporum. So these are some of the common fungal species which are basically taken from research works which were conducted earlier. So you can just refer to this PPT, and in the last slide I've also referred to my paper. You can just make sure of what are the kind of research paper. If you are interested about this certain works, you can definitely refer to my research work as well. Okay, apart from fungi and algae, there are also roles of enzyme in textile wastewater treatment. So for example, enzymes can act as biocatalysts that can degrade complex dye molecule. Okay, so this source are mainly produced by bacteria, fungi, algae, and plants. Almost every classes that we are studying produces this particular factor, which is called as enzymes, right? So enzymes break complex dye molecules into simpler and less toxic compounds. I would add one more word, that it basically helps it to degrade, right, in the atmosphere, or you can say in the environment, sorry. Right. The advantages is that it is a low energy requirement process compared to physical and chemical. It is eco-friendly and effective across wide pH and temperature ranges, right? There can be certain application forms, such as it can be used as pure enzymes, crude extract, or immobilized enzymes in wastewater treatment systems. Moving forward, again, there can be different classes of bacterial degradation, and our research work was mainly concerned about bacteria only, right? So the process is that the bacteria degrade dyes through cellular metabolism, enzyme, and microbial consortia. Consortia means a group of organisms, right? So a microbial consortia or a bacterial consortia means that there are various kind of bacteria which are present over there, not a single species, right? Source of bacteria, these are species which are isolated from textile effluent, sludge, or dye contaminated wastewater, right? So you can basically isolate, for example, there is an industry and this is the pipeline, and it basically releases the wastewater into this water body, right? So you can isolate sample, like you can collect the wastewater, right? Or you can isolate sample from the nearby mud, or called as which is a little bit having a consistency of a sludge. You can basically extract this particular mud as well. So you can extract a mud sample or a wastewater sample. The adaptation is that this bacteria acclimatize to harsh industrial condition and high dye concentration. The mechanism is again the same. There are certain enzymes in the bacteria which breaks this dye molecule into simpler and less toxic compound. It is a cost-effective and eco-friendly method for wastewater treatment. Moving forward, there are also phytoremediation, right? So phytoremediation is basically using plants to remove or degrade the pollutants, right? So it is a sunlight-driven process. So actually, it is one of the most reliable. I mean, it is very sustainable and cost-effective because the energy source is itself photosynthesis. The mechanism is plant absorb those compound, and then their supporting microorganism can degrade, or some plant even possess some kind of enzyme which can again degrade this kind of textile dye. The suitable plants are the plants with fibrous roots and fast growth, such as grasses and aquatic plants. The environmental benefit, it provides habitat restoration and in situ cleanup. So for example, there is a wastewater stream which is flowing. So you can basically plants, you can plant some plants over here, right? You can place plants on this particular line. It can actually result in habitat restoration, so possibly making a compost habitat over here, as well as also supporting the in situ cleanup. Okay, so for example, if you place plants over here, this particular area can be cleaned, right? Or if you are placing plants in this area, this can be. But if you are placing like this can result in habitat restoration, right? Moving forward, there can be different kinds of or mechanisms of phytoremediation. For example, phytoextraction. So what happens in phytoextraction is plants absorb contaminant from water or soil through roots, right? In the case of phytodegradation, it mainly the plant enzymes break down those dye molecules into simpler compounds. Rhizodegradation, microorganism in the root zone degrade the pollutants. So nodule plants, right? Those microorganisms living over there can degrade those pollutant. Phytovolatilization, which means that pollutants are absorbed and later they are released into the atmosphere. So basically, if you want to maintain our air quality index, then this can be a very effective way, right? So for air. And hydraulic control, so what happens is plant absorb contaminated water, reducing the pollutant spread. Moving forward, there can be different kinds of plant used in dye removal. For example, Acornia crassipis, water hyacinth, used for purification of textile mill effluent, right? Because these plants are generally found near textile mill effluents. Annual herbs and grass, efficient pollutant absorption due to their fast growth. Aquatic plants, effective in wastewater treatment systems. Also, there can be biosorption. So as I mentioned earlier, there is this adsorption technique, right? So there is certain kind of particles which can basically adsorb textile on their surface, right? So for example, this is the particle, this is their surface. So they can basically adsorb some kind of textile dyes or textile elements onto them. For example, these blues are the textile element. They can adsorb like this, okay, or form a sheet like this over it. Okay, all right. So moving forward, their importance is they are efficient for cleaning complex synthetic dyes such as reactive dyes, right? So the one of the major importance area is they can remove certain dye called as reactive dyes, right? It is a class of dye which are very difficult to degrade. The mechanism is that the dye molecules attach to the surface of biomass through adsorption process. The advantages is it is low cost, eco-friendly, and efficient for wastewater treatment. Some of the common bioabsorbs algae, fungi, bacteria, plant biomass, and agricultural wastes. So there are certainly some kind of biomass, for example, the Posidonia oceanica biomass, which is basically the dye removed are direct and reactive dyes. And there are some kind of optimal conditions as well. The optimal conditions are generally in pH, temperature, right, and certain kind of factors, for example, right, mainly pH and temperature. Okay, so if you see here, this particular biomass, the maximum adsorption occurs at pH 2 to 5, right, and 30 degrees Celsius, slightly acidic, and normal temperature. Then this particular biomass, the dye removed are Remazole Black B and Remazole Red. There is a strong affinity for textile dyes. Pinus sylvestris cone biomass, the dye removed is Reactive Red 195. So if you want to refer which paper is citing this, I will show you the last slide. You can just refer to my paper and find the the consent paper that is cited, and you can just read more about it. The bioabsorption capacity increased with temperature. So what it means is there is a certain temperature up till, but if you are aware about the enzyme chemistry, so what happens is up till a certain temperature the enzyme works, but after that it breaks down, right? So this fine line is very important. So this doesn't mean that if we try to increase temperature unlimited, the bioabsorption capacity increases. Rather, there is a certain temperature up till it increases, but after that the enzyme breaks, right? So the process will again go slower, or even it halts, basically it stops. The next is Aspergillus fumigatus biomass. The dye is methylene blue, and the dye removal is around 93.5%. So very efficient. Moving forward, these are the factors which are affecting your dye bioabsorption. For example, pH, right, temperature, biomass size, dye concentration, and the contact time. So if you are performing any experiments on a textile dye and you want to degrade it via bioabsorption technique, you should remind this while simulating your conditions in lab. For azodye degradation, again, these are some of the factors. So the earlier slide discussed about bioabsorption. Apart from if you want to study using fungal or bacterial or algal cultures, you can refer to this parameters. For example, the pH, temperature, neutral conditions, right, or microbial. So this and this are basically same, and the microbial activity. Coming to the end of the PPT, these are the references. So you can refer to this particular paper of mine. You can also find me on Google Scholar, on Academia, on ResearchGate as well, right? So if you want to cite my work or want to read more, you can definitely find me on these platforms as well. And with that, it brings us to the end of today's episode of Curious Science with Sagnik. So today we explored the science behind textile dyes and how the process used in the textile industry can impact our environment and human health. So understanding this challenge is the first step toward developing more sustainable and eco-friendly solutions. If you find this episode interesting and if you learned something new, so don't forget to like this video and share with others who are curious about science. And subscribe to the channel for more episodes where we explore the science behind everyday things. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the science around you. Thank you, everyone.